You're listening to Encore Friday, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Principal Matters Podcast, episode 412. Hello, Principal Matters listeners. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the school leaders podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, we're talking to my special guest, Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket, about the principal's journey. Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket is a wife and a mother and a principal and a public speaker and an author. With decades as a teacher and leader in public education, she has earned the reputation as a strong instructional leader, passionate educational advocate, and dedicated mentor. As the principal of a top-ranked school in Maryland, she is a lifelong learner who strives for excellence not only for herself, but also for those whom she serves. Dr. Edoho-Eket's belief is fostering meaningful relationships serves as the foundation for everything she does, and her highly effective teaching and leadership style continues to inspire and help aspiring teacher leaders. During her educational career, she has proudly served as a classroom teacher, instructional team leader, mentor teacher, assistant principal, and principal. Her book, The Principal's Journey, Navigating the Path to School Leadership, provides a helpful and practical blueprint for educators to follow as they transition into new leadership roles. Her degrees are from Temple University, McDaniel College, and she has her doctorate from Trevecca Nazarene University. Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket, welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me, Mr. Parker. I'm just so excited to be here. Well, one thing that you may not know about me is that I was a Division I student athlete. And when I was in high school, I was an All-American. I ran track and hurdles specifically, and I placed as an All-American as a high school runner. So that's something I don't say very often, but I'm proud of it.
You should be proud of it, which completely explains why I met you for the first time working out.
Yes.
Because we were both presenting at a conference in Maryland with the principals associations there, the elementary and secondary. And so shout out to the wonderful friends at Maryland's principals associations. And that morning I got up early with a buddy of mine and we went down to do some work, and there you were in the gym. And I told you this later. I thought in my head, wow, I wonder if she's a leader, because a lot of times when I see leaders working out early in the morning, they're and I don't want to say this to listeners to make you feel like if you're not a person that does morning workouts, you're not a high achiever, because everybody has their thing that they do, and people choose different times of the day to do their thing. And I've not done the research, Rachel, but anecdotally, as I've met leaders over the years that have just they enjoy those morning workouts, man, they start off their days focused. Why is that something that's so important to you?
I think for me, it's the discipline of I want to take care of myself first. And I'll talk about that a little bit more about the work-life balance, but it's a good way for me to start my day. And because I've been a student athlete my entire life, that just was a part of my day. We had 6 a.m. practices at Temple University. So I still wake up at 6 a.m. and I still do a workout in the mornings. That's the first thing that I do when I get out of the bed. So it's just a nice rhythm for me to get things going.
It is. Well, I'm excited to talk about your book, but before we do, tell us a little bit about your own education and leadership journey and what led you to do the work that you're doing today, and tell us about your school.
Awesome. So I was a kindergarten teacher to start my career. That was not something that I had anticipated, teaching kindergarten. I am a third-generation educator. So my grandmother has her degree, my mother has her degree, my aunt has her degree as well, all in education. And so I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I did not know that school leadership was in the cards for me. But I loved teaching. And so I really tried to be the best teacher that I could be. I loved early childhood. I'm early childhood certified and elementary certified. So I love the process of teaching children how to read. I love the process of teaching them, math and watching them make new discoveries. And so I really believed I was going to be an early childhood teacher for the entire 30 years of my career. But it was a mentor and a former principal who tapped me to be a team leader in kindergarten and just begin to give me so many different leadership experiences. And I loved all of them. I loved, helping her and having a seat at the table. All that was really important to me. I could see how much more you could do outside of the four walls of your classroom. But even at the time when she said to me, Rachel, I think that I could see you running a building one day. Is this something you would be interested in? I said, no, I don't want to do that. I was most comfortable with my students. And she just said, okay, and continued to give me those leadership experiences, continued to pour into me till finally it clicked for me. And I said, I think I will go back to school and get my certification. And so I did do that. And within that year of getting my certification, doing the internship, I was promoted to an assistant principal. And I was in that role for 4 years at my current school, and now serving in my 5th year as principal. So I've been at my school now for a decade. I simply adore my learning community. I love our staff. Our families are tremendous. The students are absolutely incredible. We're celebrating great news. We are the #1 ranked school in Central Maryland for education and in public school. And that's something that our community is very proud of, and something that our staff have been working hard on, really just moving students as high as they can go. And so we're so happy to see that come to fruition this year.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's so amazing.
Thank you.
So what I love about your story is how someone modeled for you the kind of leadership mentorship that was able to open your eyes to the possibilities of things that were happening outside your classroom. And because this is a show for school leaders, I never want to ever forget the joy of classroom teaching.
Yes.
But I also know that there's something that is incredibly rewarding about watching that expand to an entire campus. And so that's where I want to talk about your book, The Principal's Journey, Navigating the Path of School Leadership, because you and I were talking before we started recording that it's funny when you hit year 5, suddenly people look at you as a veteran, and you're like, I didn't see myself as a veteran, but you've taken the time now to think about what lessons have I learned, and you've placed them in this wonderful resource. So talk a little bit first about that area of mentorship and why that's such an important path in leadership.
I just am so incredibly thankful to my mentors. Each mentor that I have has been influential in one step of the way or along the way, and has served as such an incredible purpose in my leadership journey. And so the reason why I wrote the book was because I thought, wow, if I didn't have a mentor, then where would I be? And what I learned as I'm speaking to aspiring leaders, or as I'm doing sessions and I'm speaking with people, many people do not have a mentor. And so that was really my inspiration for writing the book. I have learned some wonderful things from the amazing mentors in my life. What if I combined all of that into one book? And typically when I was reading leadership books, it was about what you do when you're in the position. But there were very few books that talked about how to get there. So my book fills that gap for people, that if you don't have a mentor, I'm going to tell you how to get a mentor. I'm going to give you some strategies how to do that, because the mentors are the key to helping you get to that next level. You can try to do it yourself, but a mentor is really going to elevate you. They're going to speak your name into different rooms. And it's really important that you have someone who is supporting you and modeling best practices, like I had from my wonderful mentors. And so one of the things I talk about is, if you don't have a mentor, first of all, what qualities should you be looking for? You should be looking for someone who has a similar leadership philosophy that you have, similar beliefs, someone that, it will be honest with you and can share transparent feedback, someone who wants to see you do well, and then also how to reach out to the mentors. So I always encourage people, if you don't have a mentor, take a risk. Take that professional risk, reach out directly to the people who you admire and let them know what your goals are, and say, how can I hear your story? Because often when we hear how someone else did it, that makes it more reasonable and gives us a maybe see ourselves doing what they did. So I always recommend, when you are reaching out to someone, have some questions in mind, and my book provides some questions, and really think about how you can add value to your mentor, right? So one of my strategies is to say, how can I help you? I know you probably have lots of projects that you're working on. Here are some of my skill sets. Is there any way I could shadow you for a day? Is there anything you could use help with that I might be able to contribute to? Because that's a great way to learn alongside a mentor as well.
Rachel, the wisdom in that is supported by another book that I really like to recommend to leaders. and students called Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dale Evans. They were Stanford professors in design engineering. And when they were working with students who were struggling to know what to do with their degrees once they graduated, they were surprised because they're like, these are highly qualified, great kids with really marketable degrees, and they're struggling. And so they put together an elective course for their students on how to apply their design engineering ideas to their future planning. And one of the things they suggest in there is exactly what you just described, which is looking into the fields that you have interest in and finding people in there that are doing the things you'd like to do, or maybe you think you'd like to do, and building a relationship, reaching out, asking them for feedback, asking them to coffee, asking them to, if you could job shadow, and then seeing if there's a place where you could add value to the work that they're doing too. So kudos, what a great way to help leaders who are stepping into this journey to think about growing their path. Doesn't have to be alone. It can immediately be connected with others. What thoughts do you want to add to that?
So actually, I was just in the cafeteria with some students in third grade, and they asked me what was, some of the hardest things about being a principal. And I said, well, there could be many challenges at any given time. I said, there might be a staff member who has something that they want me to help with, and then there might be a student who needs some support with a behavior, and then there might be a parent who wants to discuss something with me. And I said, and during those times, I reach out to our other leaders in the building. And I might say, can you help me with this issue? And can you help me with that issue? And I said, I don't do anything by myself. I always will look to see who is available to help me. And they said, oh, that makes so much sense, Dr. Edoho-Eket. I said, yeah. So this is not one of those jobs where you can do it all by yourself. And so I've learned that over time, having been promoted during COVID time. That was my first year as a principal. To now, I've always known that teams are important, having my athletic background, but definitely flexing the strengths of other people and using that to elevate the whole school is really important.
Well, that's a perfect segue into what I wanted to ask you next, which is you talk about the power of building relationships. So let's go there next, because I know that spans lots of different individuals in a school community, but talk about why that's so important to you.
Yeah. So building relationships is truly the foundation of everything that we do. I know of leaders, we come in, we want to do all these amazing ideas and all these great initiatives. Well, we cannot do them without people. So it's most important that we win those relationships with people first. And I know a lot of strategies that I like to use, but the most basic strategy is just being a helpful presence. When I first was promoted here at my school, I was one of the youngest people on staff. And I didn't come in saying I know everything, because I definitely did not. But I came in humbly to say, I have some skills that I'm really excited to share with the community, but I have a lot to learn from each of you, and I would love to help. Where can I jump in and be a helpful presence? If that meant I'm outside directing traffic that day for someone who was covering another student, then that's what I'm doing as both an AP and a principal. If that means that I'm tying a child's shoe because they need help, I'm going to be a helpful presence. So I think building that rapport and relationships, being very visible, having your ear to the ground, or having people who you trust be able to tell you honestly how things are going so that you can be responsive proactively is really, really important.
I was talking to someone just recently about, of course, I talk about leadership all the time with principals. And so often I think in this work, because we're passionate to see students helped, because we're passionate to do good work, I know this was my weakness, Rachel, is I stepped into that work initially thinking, if I just have enough drive and enough energy and enough passion, then we'll get the job done. And after the first year of just wearing myself thin, I began to take a step back and ask, what am I doing? Because every time someone comes to me with a problem, I'm trying to find the solution. Or every time someone mentions something that's going wrong, I try to figure out a way to make it better. And it wasn't until I began to take a step back and realize I have to help people help themselves.
Yes.
I have to figure out how do we build the relationships necessary so that the community of teachers and learners and parents can accomplish these tasks when I'm not in the room.
Right.
So talk a little bit about how that mindset
Yes.
shift helps us in our leadership growth.
Yeah, that's so critically important, just building the capacity of the teachers and leaders around you. I know we've done a lot of work with our leadership team, and it has changed over time. Again, I've been here almost a decade, so we've seen new leaders come and go. And one of the things that we've really worked on is building the capacity. How can we handle hard conversations with families? How can we, handle conflict within our own team? So we do a lot of modeling as a leadership team. We talk about scenarios. We talk about real life things that are happening in the building. And we really try to communicate very clearly so that people understand what structures are in place and then how they can utilize those structures too. It's the same mentality around, again, we can't do everything ourselves. So who are the people that we can call upon and tap upon either in the building or outside of our building within our district who can help us in making sound decisions, in helping to mend relationships, in making best decisions on behalf of children. So I think for me, definitely being explicit in my thought process and how, okay, there's this issue. So what do we need to address first? Who can we get into contact with? And then once we've gone through all of those steps logistically, how can we close the loop? Who do we need to follow up with to make sure that everyone is on the same page? So it's really a full cycle that we try to model. And what's been great now, a decade later, is as things come up, a teacher might say, oh, a parent has this question. Here's how I'm planning on responding. I will keep you posted if I need your help later. I love that, because that is a very big shift from 10 years ago. So it's been great to see the teachers' capacity building over time.
There's a real joy that happens when you're able to be in a place long enough to see those transformations take place, and when the staff begin to all share those similar values and languages. And even as a leader, when you get to be responsible for helping bring on the staff that becomes your family working together. So those relationships are so rich. The third question I wanted to ask you about your book, and we talked about this right at the beginning of this conversation, is navigating that work-life balance. So why is that so essential if you're going to be able to sustain on this journey?
Yes. So this one is very personal to me because I am someone that nearly left the profession. As I shared with you earlier, Will, I was promoted during the onset of COVID-19. So my first year of the principalship was 2019, 2020. And in 2019, in the fall, everything was wonderful. Winter was okay. And then March 13th occurred. And so I'm in overdrive. As you mentioned, Will, your first year as principal, you didn't stop. I didn't stop. I thought the whole school was going to fall apart if I didn't send an email. So I was up emailing at 11 p.m., because we didn't have structures in place. There were things, we were building that plane as it went along. And even though we made it through that first year in one piece, I personally did not make it through that first year in one piece. And I said, okay, let's go into year two. This year's going to be better. It's going to be great. And then year two started and the children were at home for half that year. And then in the second half of hybrid, half of the children, portion came back and the others were at home. And we were trying to manage between virtual and students with us. I said, okay, year three, it's going to be better. Come on, year three. Year three, everyone came back, but with all these restrictions. So it still felt, it was not, this great thing. And I began to question myself, is this something I can do? I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't exercising. I don't know what I was doing, frankly. And it really took me to, really do a lot of introspection and get therapy through my school system, which was incredible. I definitely recommend therapy. I needed someone who was independent of me, did not know my past or my present, and could really just ask me questions so I could really reflect and I could hear her perspective. And it really changed my life. I learned I was a very rigid thinker, and I, only saw things one certain way that they had to be. And she helped me to understand this question: is that the only way it could be done? That helped me so much, because then I could look at different processes in our building. I could look at different community events that we were doing and say, how else can we do this in a way that honors our students, that honors our families and our staff, but also respects the time that our staff members need to recharge and be at home with their families. So that was really a great thing for me to experience, because now I can come to talk with new leaders and current veteran aspiring leaders and say, hey, I've been on one side and I've come out on the other side, and I've come out better now because I have a better balance in place in my life.
Wow, what a story. And there's so many golden nuggets in there, but I wrote down that quote from your therapist. Is that the only way it can be done?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we get so fixated on the process that we forget that there's almost always more than one option.
Yes.
I like to tell this is something that I've only adapted in the last couple of years, but I like to tell my friends, can you avoid the binary, please? Because usually it's not a choice between my way or your way. Usually there's another pathway available.
Yes.
That maybe we haven't thought about.
Mhm.
And that works in so many ways, Rachel, in your own decision making, in the ways that you counsel other people, in the possibilities for what you're going to do next, is giving yourself permission to take a step back and look for those multiple options.
Yeah.
I want to, anything else you want to say about self-care? Because I want to follow up with some questions about your school.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing I was just going to share about that kind of binary piece is that it's so limiting. I didn't realize that. And it is true what you said in terms of the possibilities. Just having options is really important in this role, because there are sometimes we don't have options, right? We're abiding by our school system's policies. Those are things that we don't have control over. But I know during the time for me, during COVID-19, I felt such a lack of control. I started trying to hold on to as much as I could. So it was very freeing for me to think, even though we've always done things a certain way, that doesn't mean that we can't try it another way. And that's what I've said to my community, to my staff. Every time we try something new, I say, we can always go back because we already know what that produces. But let's try something new. And if it doesn't work, we can go back. And I rarely get pushed back on those things when we try to do something new. And 9 times out of the 10, we come out with a better product, or we have some feedback to say, okay, it didn't work exactly, but if we change one more thing, we'd get it exactly where we want it to be.
That's so rich. I want to wrap up this conversation, Rachel, with some parting words from you. But before we go there, I want to come back to something that listeners may have been asking as you introduced yourself at the beginning of this conversation, because I think this is something that if I had a chance to walk in your school, I would be wanting to ask you, which was, how does a school become a number 1 ranked school in their state? So give us, and I know that could be a whole nother episode, but help us understand for just in short, what are some of the things you guys have been doing in the last few years, post COVID, and where you are today to get you to this place?
Yeah, so we are so proud of the work that we're doing. We've done a lot of great work. I would say the main thing that we've done is really that relationship building in terms of, absenteeism. That's something that all schools are struggling with. And so we've really emboldened our student support team, we call it SST in our district, to really have those relationships with families, having teachers making those personal calls on that second day of the absence. Hey, is everything okay? We want to check in. We're missing our friend today. Those personal touches make a difference. And we have seen improvement in our overall attendance. And so we know if a student's going to be successful, attendance is number 1, right? They have to be in the building to hear that instruction. And so we also talk about that with families in the beginning of the year, that we have to work together. And we have a lot of standards and a lot of things to cover this year. And the first defense, the first thing that's most important is that your child is present with us as long as he or she is healthy. So we really encourage our families to look at the calendar, do vacations outside of that time if we can, because it's really important that our students are here. So that's a standard that we set in the beginning of the year. And then when we're in school, we are very, very tight on our data meetings. So we look very closely at student performance. And that's one thing that our team leaders have been trained on. We did a lot of time, my leadership team and I, on, hey, we're going to do some sample data meetings before we launch them. That was really powerful. And it really has become embedded now as a part of the weekly team planning meetings. So The other thing that we struggled with at the time was a lot of, there were sub-coverage issues. And in the past, we used to have our paraprofessionals doing interventions while the teachers taught. Well, one of our huge shifts that we made over COVID was the highest certified person in the room is to be doing the interventions. That was a full shift of what we had been doing in the past. And it's made a world of the difference, because we were finding, even though our teachers were planning interventions, our paraprofessionals might be subbing elsewhere. We're not able to do it anyway. So we found some structures within the locus of control of the teacher's classroom, where he or she will be able to provide a second dose of instruction for the students who needed it. And that's made a big difference. So now that the students who are getting that second dose are, taken care of and getting their interventions from the highly certified teacher in the room, we started looking at who are the students who always are getting 100%? Who are the students with straight A's? Can they move up a level themselves? So if they're on grade level, can we move and shift some students to above grade level? The above grade level students, can we shift some of those students to gifted and talented? So we are constantly looking to shift and move students in both ELA and math, and that's made a difference in our overall scores and outcomes.
Wow. Okay, Rachel, there's so much you said there. Thank you so much. I'm so glad I asked that question, because you guys have done such a wonderful job of focusing on how to increase attendance through relationships, personal touches, visiting with families, how to examine your data for student performance, modeling those meetings, shifting your highest certified teachers to those interventions, remediations, and also shifting your students to places where they can accelerate and grow as well. So wow, what a wonderful summary of how a school behaves and performs to get to that place of achievement that you guys have reached. As we wrap up this conversation, Rachel, I want to ask you two things in closing. One is just any parting words or advice that you would have for any leader that's listening as they're stepping into this new school year at the time that this will be released. And then how can people connect with you? Because you have so many wonderful resources, and I want my listeners to be able to become your friend.
Well, thank you again for having me, Will. I really appreciate this opportunity. So I would say just advice for the leaders who are starting the school year. First of all, have a wonderful school year. That's number one. And I definitely encourage you to start with those relationships first. That's the most critical part of the work. We can do anything when we have strong, positive relationships with people. So I always encourage leaders, if you have a choice between being in your office for 5 minutes or stepping outside of your office into the hallway for 5 minutes, just step outside for that 5 minutes. You might be able to impact a student in that 5 minutes. You might be able to connect with a staff member you haven't seen in a couple of minutes. You might run into a parent during that time. So just when we're given that choice, as we talked about, just make that choice to be visible, and you'll have so many beautiful unintended consequences just from that alone. So I always encourage that. And there are so many ways to stay connected with me, and that's through Instagram. I'm at The Principal's Journey. I'm also on Twitter at Rachel Edoho-Eket. I'm on YouTube at Rachel Edoho-Eket, and I'm on LinkedIn at Dr. Edoho-Eket. So if you see another Edoho-Eket, it's probably a person in my family. So otherwise, it's me.
Well, Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket, thank you so much for the leadership that you are modeling, for the way that you're loving and leading your school, for writing this wonderful book, The Principal's Journey, Navigating the Path to School Leadership. And Principal Matters listeners, I just want to encourage you to reach out to Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket at her Instagram account, on YouTube, through her social media channels. And Rachel, thank you so much for this opportunity. And Principal Matters listeners, thank you for doing what matters. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Encore Friday.